Hello, I'm Senator Marilou McPhedran of Canada, and I'm introducing today a podcast discussion of young women leaders. There is going to be a crisis of leadership at the upcoming COP26 environmental conference that is hosted by the UK in Glasgow, Scotland. There's a crisis because there's a lack of women's leadership allowed in to this conference. And there's another